with the district. And please proceed when you are ready.
Angelica Bernal, CPAC.
Ellen Jedri-Gadara, the special education parent. Ellen Jedri or CPAC.
Thank you.
We are speaking today on behalf of the steering committee of the ARP Special Education Parents Advisory Council, CPAC, to express concerns over the proposed draft for revisions of JKAA policy under consideration today. This revised draft is far less robust and protective than the draft shared in February, which was crafted in collaboration with families and CPAC. We remain deeply concerned that the policy as written lacks sufficient procedural clarity, operational guidance, and accountability structures necessary to ensure student safety, staff support, and consistent implementation across district. The policy repeatedly states that physical restraint and seclusion are, quote, prohibited, while also permitting them in emergency situations involving imminent risk of serious physical harm. As written, it remains difficult to understand what is operationally changing, what practices remain allowable, and what standards staff are expected to use in real-time crisis situations. Terms such as, quote, imminent risk, quote, serious physical harm, quote, last resort, and, quote, all non-physical alternatives have been tried, all quotes from the draft policy, remain open to interpretation without clearer procedural guidance, examples, and implementation protocols. We are particularly concerned that the distinction between prohibited seclusion, permissible timeout, physical escort, and restraint may remain unclear in practice, especially during moments of escalation. In some of the most difficult, high-stake moments for both students and educators, clarity is essential. Staff deserve explicit guidance about expectations, procedures, decision-making standards, and documentation requirements. No classroom educator or school administrator should be left to independently determine how to navigate these situations without comprehensive district direction and support. This policy should explicitly include clear parent notification timelines and communication requirements, mandatory review procedures and team meetings following repeated incidences of restraint and seclusion, detailed documentation and district-wide data reporting expectations, training requirements, coaching structures, and implementation oversight for all staff, and transparent systems for monitoring compliance, identifying patterns, and addressing disproportionality.
Thank you. These structures are not punitive, they are protective. Excuse me. They support students, families, educators, and administrators alike by establishing consistency, accountability, and clarity in moments of crisis. We are concerned that sorry, I lost my place. There is not enough leadership and oversight to implement this work effectively. Existing data and family experiences suggest long-standing inconsistency in practice, insufficient oversight, and inadequate procedural guidance. As a result, trust between families and the district has been damaged. This past week, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees shared an example policy to help committees revise their policies to be compliant with the new state regulations coming into effect in August. This policy suggestion, while lacking some of the provisions currently included in our JKAA draft policy, does have procedures included. We strongly encourage the school committee to also include procedures in the new policy. Not every single procedural detail, but enough to ensure consistency of policy implementation between ARP schools. We are also alarmed by the district's continued plan to construct 4 new seclusion rooms in the new school building, also called reflection rooms, while simultaneously advancing language about limiting or abolishing seclusion. Many families view this as fundamentally contradictory and as a clear indication that seclusion remains embedded in the district's behavioral management approach. Families believe this is inconsistent with best practice and contrary to what we know supports children's emotional regulation, dignity, safety, and long-term well-being. We share the district's goal of reducing restraint and seclusion to the greatest extent possible through proactive, compassionate, and evidence-based support. However, achieving that goal requires more than aspirational language. It requires strong district leadership, transparent systems, meaningful oversight, clear procedures, and sustained accountability. The school committee and district leadership must step up for both students and staff, providing the direction, training, oversight, and implementation structures necessary to ensure this policy is applied safely, consistently, and in alignment with best practices for our children. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for your incredibly hard work on this policy. I know there's been a lot going on since the fall, and we do all really, really appreciate it.
Thank you both. If you would leave a copy or email it to me, then I will attach it to the agenda. Thank you. Are there any other public commenters, either online or in the town room? So that concludes public comment, and we will proceed with the rest of our meeting. The next order of business is the minutes. That didn't happen today either. So then the following order of business is warrants. And we don't have to approve those. Those are just posted. So the next order is then review of selected school committee policies and Mass General Law. So I thought it was a good time for us to talk about what our responsibilities are. It is not an obvious designation of roles, either for the school committee or for the superintendent, and certainly not the interaction of the two. So I thought for the benefit of the community who may not be necessarily reading all the documentation, as well as to set us up properly for the next 2 agenda items, I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about that. So the fundamental part that I want to read, this is, and I will attach this to, I didn't put this on the agenda because it just seemed like I was going a little crazy with the attachments. It's a Massachusetts Associations for School Committees document on roles and responsibilities, and it's many pages, but the part that I think is relevant for today is policy and the distinction between the role of school committee and the superintendent. So for school committee, it states, establish and periodically review educational goals and policies for the schools in the district consistent with the requirements of the law and the statewide goals and standards established by the Board of Education. This is the primary role of the school committee. Policies should be reflective of the fact that the school committee has oversight of and responsibility for the school system, the direction in which the system must go, and establish criteria to determine if its goals and policies are being met. For the superintendent, it says, develop and inform the committee of administrative procedures required to implement committee policies. present policy options along with specific recommendations to the school committee when circumstances require the committee to adopt new policies or review existing policies. So any comments or discussion about that part of it? This agenda item? Okay. So the policies, the school committee policies that are also about more broad things. So the first one is BBA, as school committee powers and duties. And it says, among other things, according to Chapter 71, Section 37 and 59 of the General Laws of Massachusetts, the school committee shall establish educational goals and policies for the school in the district consistent with the requirements of law and statewide goals and standards established by the Board of Education. That among other things. So that's the part I wanted to point out. I'm just going to keep going. So if anybody wants to interrupt me, please go ahead. Or not interrupt, but participate in this. The next policy I'd like to point out is called Non-Discrimination on the Basis of Disability, ACE. The Amherst School District, etc., does not discriminate against an individual with a disability with regards to job application procedures, hiring, advancement, or discharge of employees. No, that's the employees part. Sorry. The Amherst School Committee is committed to supporting students who qualify under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and to ensure that such students are not denied access or admission to the activities, programs, and services offered by the school because of their disability. As well, the school districts are committed to ensuring that students with disabilities are not treated differently because of their disability. The superintendent or their designee will take the necessary steps to inform parents and guardians and students of their rights under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, including the right to receive reasonable accommodations if the student is found to be qualified under Section 504. Additionally, the superintendent or designee will take the necessary steps to ensure parents/guardians and students are informed of their procedural rights under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And then there's a grievance section. If an individual is interested in filing a complaint that they have been discriminated against, their complaint should be filed in accordance with the district's grievance procedures for discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. The student handbooks and grievance procedures shall identify the name, office address, and telephone number for the compliance officers for the above referenced statutes, and this policy shall be posted on the district's websites. Continuing, school committee policies. This is just the school committee will develop policies and put them in writing so that they may serve as guides for the discretionary action of those to whom it delegates authority. The formulation and adoption of these written policies will constitute the basic method by which the school committee will exercise its leadership in providing for the successful and efficient functioning of the school system. Through the study and evaluation of reports concerning the execution of its policies, the school committee will exercise its control of school operations. The school committee accepts the definition of policy set forward by the National School Board Association. Policies are principles adopted by a school committee to chart a course of action. They tell what is wanted. They may include why and how much. Policies should be broad enough to indicate a line of action to be followed by the administration in meeting a number of problems, narrow enough to give clear guidance. Policies are guides for action by the administration, who then sets the rules and regulations to provide specific directions to school district personnel. The policies of the school board are framed and are meant to be interpreted in terms of state law, regulations of the Massachusetts Board of Education, and other regulatory agencies of the various levels of government. Okay. There's a review and evaluation process, a way of suspending policies, and a clause for what happens if there is no policy regarding a particular topic. I attached a flow chart for policy development for single district policies, which is what we will be looking at this evening. Suggestions from new policies or changes to existing policies may be offered by the superintendent, school committee member, policy committee, or other individual group. Those suggestions are supposed to be submitted to the school committee for discussion. If the decision is made that policy change or new policy may be needed, the school committee assigns the work to either superintendent, policy subcommittee, existing or new subcommittee, who then does the research on the topic. The superintendent requests input from people who would be affected by the policy. If the work is done by a subcommittee, input from the superintendent is also required. Legal advice may be needed. Then whatever entity is doing that makes a recommendation or may draft a policy for consideration by the appropriate school committee. And then there's more of the flow chart. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just yes, thank you, sorry. Getting used to the town room and these lovely mics. I'm very interested about these two pathways, right? Because I think we've had a moment maybe of conflating the two to some extent in the way that we've worked with JKAA. And like I first brought my version to a meeting where the other JKAA was coming up. And then it was directed towards policy. And now we have a version that's very strongly supported at policy. And we have another version that was coming on a different pathway. And so I think at some point Amherst may make a different decision about which way to come through in tonight. So a policy can come from a school committee member, be discussed at a school committee twice, which tonight would be our second read. And then at that point, we can either assign the work to the school committee, or we can take it back to policy. So the reason I'm raising it is because I think after tonight, we have to decide the next step. So I just want that sort of frame for the discussion.
Thank you, Bridget. Anybody else? Okay, the last part, it turns out, is not as relevant as I thought. So I attached something to the agenda, and upon review, it's not as relevant. So I'm going to mention it, but then skip it. It's about safe and supportive school framework. It's it's part of a DESE regulation and chapter 6. So at Mass General Law 69, section 1P. But that's really all I wanted to bring up for this agenda item. And I, again, open it up to anybody else who would like to comment or ask a question. Okay. So the next order of our business is student safety and welfare. And the first part of this is going to be a memo to the Amherst School Committee regarding restraint/seclusion blue rooms at Fort River Elementary, presented by Laura Jane Hunter. Andrew, do you want to display it? Or Laura Jane, do you want to display it? Or I can do it. can try it.
Let's see.
Or I think it's a visual, so I think it's important to have it.
Let me get it. I have it printed. Let me open it up on my screen.
Deb, do you have it? 'Cause you could,
I
yeah,
do. So
okay. Why
I'll
don't you go ahead and share your screen?
I'll pull it up and share my screen,
And then I can read it.
and then you can read it. And just give me a minute here. Oh, I'm in the wrong meeting. That's the earlier meeting.
Also, I don't know if it matters, but the ARPS Zoom just shows a blank screen and we can't see the town room. Does that matter?
The,
Thanks, I'll check on that.
okay. Should I pause or should I continue?
I think if you share your screen, it should be fine.
Okay.
Is it me or is it not showing up?
It says it's paused. Share. Stop. Turn it off and try again. Please switch to the desktop.
Do you want me to see if I can share?
Stupid. I am in the desktop. Ooh, oh, that's not what I want to do. Yeah. All right, let's try it one more time. No, still don't want to do that. Stupid.
We probably should have talked about this beforehand.
I don't know. It's not letting me share that particular screen here.
All right, let me
Let's
see.
Move. Oh, okay. All right. It's still, I think it's my interface.
Okay.
I didn't, it just doesn't let me share that. I have like too many desktops. I'm going to close them all.
You can email to me.
Okay. We can just do that. I can just keep emailing you stuff. Email or text. Oh,
Did that work?
somebody's got it. Yeah, Laura Jane's got it. Okay.
Okay.
Moving forward, I will email you them. Okay.
Can
So-
everyone see that? Is that size okay?
Yeah,
It-
just zoom in a little bit with your,
Okay. How's that?
that's great. That's great. Just remember to scroll up when you're reading.
Okay. Scroll up or scroll down?
Sorry, down.
Okay. On Thursday, March 5th, 2026, Deb, Leonard, and I traveled to Fourth River at 11:30 a.m. to view the restraint/seclusion rooms. We were greeted by Principal Tamara Sullivan Daly, Executive Director Tonya McIntyre, and Joanne Smith, Acting Director of Student Services. After a discussion in the conference room in which we were informed that we were not allowed to view the rooms while students were in school, the administrators told Chair Leonard and I and myself that to view the rooms while the students were present was a violation of their privacy as they were identifiable as students with special needs. We suggested that we return at 3:30 p.m. when the students were no longer in the building. I returned to the school at 3:30 and was escorted, sorry about the typo here, escorted around by Tammy and Tonya. The first room I was shown was room 17, 8 feet by 12 and a half, 12 feet, 5 inches, which is a room that was available to all students in the school. That room has mats on the wall and also had soft gym mats on the floor. The second room I viewed was room B, with hard floor, blue mats on the wall in a regular shape, 9 feet wide and 6 feet on one side and 4.4 feet, 8 inches on the other. There was no door. We then walked through the first special education classroom where we viewed room CR1, which was 8 feet, 9 inches by 6 feet. That floor had hard floors and blue mats on the wall. The final room I viewed was room A with hard floors, blue mats on the walls at the far end of a hallway with the entrance on the left and a relaxation space at the very end of the hall, not of the room. That room was 8 feet, 10 inches by 7 feet by 6.5. Sorry, let me get down. Oh, I'm going to show you pictures in a second. Based on this visit and the layout, style, and location of the rooms, which were difficult to observe from the outside, sorry, folks, and it had uncomfortable spaces for the students to de-escalate, I found that the rooms were counter to their intended purpose. And then later found out that according to the Massachusetts Association for School Committees, the information that Deb and I were provided was not accurate. School committee members and caregivers, parents, and guardians are permitted to view any classroom regardless of the identities of the students in that classroom. So I'm going to show you a few pictures. Should I make this smaller probably so you can see better? So I took pictures of the rooms. How much can you see? Can you see the whole picture?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So these are, examples. You can see the hard floor, you can see the blue mats. This is the interior of one of the rooms. I think that's Tanya standing right outside. This is one of the irregular shaped rooms with that wooden frame covering a vent. This is the only sort of way to see what's happening in the room is this, what's it called? Like a mirror sort of thing. It's like a observation mirror.
A camera.
It's not I don't think that's a camera. I think it's just a mirror, but I could be wrong. This is one of the floors. This is one of the doors that weirdly has 2 handles on it. This is another view of a room. And this is the one room that is open to everyone and it is accessible. And this is the sort of more comfortable room, which was described as being something that students choose to go into for fun or relaxation. So I will stop sharing. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
Oh, sorry. Bridget.
I just want to say, Laura, like I've been prepared and thinking about this for, for a long time. I was on the phone with y'all when you were trying to come in, seeing if I could join and that type of thing. And then things were moved and delayed and that happened. But when I see the pictures, I just feel like deeply sad that we feel like this is a space that's okay for kids to be in. There's nothing about that space that feels like it would be welcoming to children. And so, there's so many things I can say, and I'm sure I'll say a lot at some point in the meeting, but that's just my initial impression is sadness.
Yeah, it was it was painful to view those rooms.
Belatedly, it seems relevant to add a trigger warning to this presentation. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry too. Especially that we know these rooms are still in use.
Okay.
So Deb, I have some motions that I would like to make, but I don't know if this is the correct time to do so.
The motions I put at the end, I have up next, unless there's discussion about what you just presented. Yeah, Andrew?
Do we have data on how many times they've been used? Both rooms over the last, I don't know, 5 years?
Bridget?
We do have data on that, and Joanne presented to us at a meeting, this, where she gave numbers for the fall, and those numbers were in the 30s, almost 40. And then we have numbers over the past years, and we have several years where the numbers are in the 90s. And what I want to say is that this isn't, let me try and explain the best way to say it. This isn't a practice that is common. We have schools in Amherst with zero use. We have schools all across the state like Andover, Arlington, bigger schools, smaller schools, suburban schools, city schools. Do you know the city of New Orleans has no seclusion school rooms at all in the whole city? There's a ban on it in New York City and Chicago. And so this isn't something that's necessary or required, but to make it something that we transition or move away from is going to take some thoughtful work for everyone, and a real, I think, both culture shift and some, um, I don't know what you want to say, like a move dramatically. It looks like CPAC might have some numbers or something to share.
Wait, I, I don't, yes, you are.
The chairs recognized
The
you.
chair has recognized you and I'm inviting you in as a panelist.
Thank you.
Alan Jedry, CPAC Steering Committee.
Ellen Jedry Gadara, CPAC Steering Committee. I just wanted to say the data that were shared in the February 24th meeting were actually about restraint, not about use of the timeout blue room seclusion rooms. Those were just about restraints. When we at CPAC have asked about data for use of the blue room, including amount of time, we have not been able to get data for that, for the use of those rooms. So I just wanted to point that out or make that distinction.
Thank you, Ellen. I just assumed that was for both practices combined. No, that's worse than I thought. Yep.
I guess the best thing to do is to make sure with Joanne, but that was my understanding.
Laura Jane has her hand up.
I want to comment on the experience. It was so difficult to get agreement to allow the school committee to go in and see the rooms. And while it's absolutely appropriate for a school committee member to be escorted by a member of the school, that is 100% what should happen. We were given a lot of misinformation and a lot of resistance to getting in to see those rooms, which kind of adds to the concern in my mind. Like if there's, and this is my opinion, I'm speaking entirely as my opinion, but if there's nothing wrong with these rooms, if there's nothing to hide, then there should be no resistance to showing them to the school committee. And it was very interesting to find out later that we had been given, that Deb and I had been given incorrect information that prevented us from viewing the rooms while the students were in the space. That felt really shocking to me when I learned that. I was at a mask training, like I think a week later, maybe 4 days later, and asked that question. And several other people asked the same question, and we all got the same answer, which is that just because just because a classroom is designated as a room for students with special needs or differences does not mean that they cannot be observed, as long as the person is chaperoned. So I just wanted to highlight that as sort of a concern. There's something about trying to pull the curtain in front of it, which makes me even feel less comfortable.
So I would like to say that part of what happened that week in terms of my informing or requesting the opportunity to see those rooms was not well executed on my behalf. That Laura Jane and I had discussed requesting a visit and arranged that date, and it was a unforeseen personal circumstances that made it so that I did not give the administration advance warning. However, I found that a large part of my morning was devoted to engaging with people rather than giving me access to see a room that concerns were raised. And all I was trying to do is, from my point of view, honor the request of CPAC, which is to see the rooms, as well as inform my decision-making and my conversations going forward around the designs of the Amethyst Brook rooms. So there's space for that process to be improved upon. So I'd like to invite the next part of this agenda item is a statement about student safety, how we speak about children in public, and a neuro-affirming path forward by CPAC and Tim Shores. And Andrew, I did email that to you. Thank you.
I'm Tim Shores. I'm from Leverett, and I am on the regional school committee, but not here representing the regional school committee.
Well, Ellen and Angelica have already done that, but you can if you want. It's entirely up to you guys, you folks. As long as the green button is lit, then you're being streamed, audio, whatever.
I got it. So first of all, thank you for organizing this agenda item, both of these agenda items, this one and the next one. So this is the statement that I have worked on with CPAC about student safety, how we speak about children in public, and a neuro-affirming path forward. I serve on the Amherst Pelham Regional School Committee, but I speak here as a parent and in partnership with CPAC, not on behalf of the committee. I make this statement to reaffirm the sole purpose of this policy review, referring to JKAA, and the superintendent's investigation, taking responsibility to protect students from harm. I'd like to begin with some recent history. During the current school year, caregivers have come forward with reports of elementary students being restrained and secluded at school, in some cases repeatedly, in some cases without timely notification to caregivers, and in some cases in ways that may not comply with state law. These reports led to committee members in Amherst organizing an emergency policy update in December. Our joint policy subcommittee is now working on a second policy revision for both compliance with state law and alignment with the appeals from caregivers. An investigation is underway, initiated by the superintendent and conducted by Attorney Jeff Sankey, an independent investigator. This work is necessary and urgent because caregivers have reported that their children were harmed. This work must remain centered on whether those children were harmed, how we prevent future harm, how we prioritize student safety in our schools, and how we develop educational practices worthy of the trust caregivers place in us. At the Regional School Committee meeting on March 10th, 2026, staff from the Amherst School District used the public comment period to reframe this issue from an investigation of reports of harm to students to an issue centering their own safety and professional integrity. I know from discussions with committee members and CPAC members that we all hear and respect that staff are frustrated. We see and recognize that the work of supporting students with complex needs can become physically and emotionally demanding. Educators have legitimate safety concerns that deserve attention. We admire the professionalism of teachers, paraprofessionals, and specialists working every day with the entire student body. We do not question their dedication. However, the public comment on March 10th did something that should not go unaddressed. It shifted attention away from student safety onto adult grievance. It characterized caregiver reports, open meeting deliberation, and the investigation itself as damaging to adult staff. And it described elementary age students in a public forum in a small community where identities are easily inferred, using language focused on deficits and danger. Whatever was intended, the impact was to dehumanize children and discredit their caregivers. Additionally, during public comment, the speaker attributed the reported restraint and seclusion practices to budget reductions, claiming that without increased funding, these problems will continue. If our current financial reality should be expected to produce harmful practices, that requires a much larger public discussion. The financial reality is that neither school committees nor superintendents decide how much revenue is available, and our towns have less revenue than our schools need. But any school operating with limited resources can and should do without the practices reported by caregivers. If Attorney Sankey's investigation identifies resource gaps as a contributing factor, that finding can inform budget decisions and a remediation plan. If Superintendent Herman reports that budget constraints impede policy implementation, we can plan accordingly. Neither is the same as concluding in advance that budget cuts caused these practices. Preempting an investigation with a budget argument shifts accountability away from the practices themselves. We now ask that the Amherst School Committee formally adopt this statement and support the following 4 requests to all stakeholders in our school district. Request number 1. Staff safety needs its own process. Staff safety is important. When staff are injured or feel unsafe, administrators must take action. That accountability requires its own investigation separate from the current one. Policy JKAA and Attorney Sankey's investigation of caregiver reports concern the safety and dignity of students. We ask that staff safety not be framed as competing with the policy or the investigation. We must not let this become a question of weighing the needs of students against the needs of staff. Request number 2. An investigation is the work of a responsible district. We support Superintendent Herman's statement that the district has an obligation to investigate any report of harm to a student thoroughly and without delay. Criticizing this investigation as an insult to professional integrity or as a drain on resources ignores its necessity, ensuring student safety. Request number 3, allow the investigation to do its work. The goal is to determine what happened and why. We ask everyone to withhold conclusions until the investigation is complete. We invite any family who wants to share their experience with seclusion and restraint to contact Attorney Jeff Sankey directly. His contact information is in a separate document attached to this agenda item. CPAC steering members met with him and found him forthcoming and easy to talk to. He welcomes hearing from caregivers, but he needs to hear soon. Request number 4, how we speak about children in public leaves a mark. Students receiving special education services are among the most vulnerable members of our community. Describing student behavior in graphic terms at a public meeting stigmatizes them and undermines an inclusive culture. When public commenters speak in defense of their professionalism, we ask for more care in how they describe the students. These 4 requests address the child-centered investigation and our conduct as adults in public meetings. But the caregiver reports and the fear of speaking up that I have heard caregivers describe point us beyond the investigation and the restraint and seclusion policy. I believe we are all being asked to figure out a larger question about culture. This spring, I began attending CPAC meetings and joined conversations with Ellen, Jen, Angelica, Maya, and Sharon, our tireless CPAC steering committee members, about the investigation, policy JKAA, and recent events concerning seclusion and restraint. The more I learned from their experience and their vision, the better I understood the opportunity in front of us. Comprehensive cultural change in how we talk about and practice special education in Amherst. I count myself as someone who needs to improve. I fall back on habits of framing childhood behavior and learning in terms of deficits and correction instead of strengths and assets. If I were to ask, for example, whether a group of students is prone to violent behavior, I might in that moment believe I'm expressing a realistic concern. But that framing treats dysregulation as a fixed trait of the students rather than a signal about their needs and their learning environment. That framing can make seclusion and restraint feel like reasonable interventions. As a parent and a school committee member, it's my responsibility to recognize these habits and work on myself with humility and compassion. District-wide change will ask the same of all of us. It will require mindfulness of language and habits modeled by school committee members and Superintendent Herman. Cultural change of this scope will also require a dedicated program of pedagogical reform. This is the large cultural question in front of us. What pedagogical worldview will we choose to guide special education in our districts? Practitioners in special education tend to work from one of 2 worldviews. One worldview frames student needs as behavioral deficits to be observed, modified, and extinguished, where success is measured by how closely a student's behavior conforms to expected norms. The other worldview frames student needs in terms of strengths to build on, prioritizing student autonomy, communication, and regulation with practices grounded in neuroaffirming approaches that embrace neurological difference as intrinsic to human diversity. The distinction is not whether behavioral supports have a place in schools, but whether the underlying goal is student compliance and conformity or student self-determination, dignity, and respect. A school district's choice between these pedagogical worldviews shapes everything from hiring to training to the daily experience of students, and we believe the choice is high stakes. Compliance-based approaches have been associated with worse long-term mental health outcomes for the people they aim to help. Whatever the outcome of Attorney Sankey's investigation, the caregiver reports are cause for reflection and action about the pedagogical worldview in our school culture. In the interest of student safety and dignity across every part of a child's school experience, we ask for a district-wide transformation to neuroaffirming, strengths-based pedagogy. To that end, we ask the Amherst School Committee to support 3 requests that elevate pedagogy and cultural change to the level of the superintendent and all committees. Request number 1, a program of action. We ask the superintendent and committees to jointly develop a program committed to neuroaffirming strengths-based special education pedagogy. This program should guide the Director of Student Services search, the selection of a third-party partner, the design of staff training, and other actions supporting student safety. The current director search cannot wait for program work to begin, but it should be informed from this point forward by an explicit commitment to this pedagogy. Request number 2, a superintendent goal. We ask the superintendent and committees to establish a goal for the upcoming school year dedicated to developing and implementing this program. A superintendent goal ensures sustained attention and creates a public record of progress that supports collaboration between Superintendent Herman and all stakeholders. Request number 3, a district policy. We asked the Joint Policy Subcommittee to develop a policy committing our districts to neuroaffirming strengths-based pedagogy as the foundation of special education practice. A district policy rises above any single program or position. It establishes the worldview that present and future superintendents, directors of student services, and staff will be expected to operate within, and it gives caregivers and students a public commitment they can hold the district to. By delivering this statement, we hope we are coming across clearly that this is a need, not a want. The district's responsibility to protect students from harm is the foundation of everything we have asked for in this statement. Our genuine belief is that our school districts cannot meet that responsibility without the program of action we ask for. In closing, I've worked with CPAC to write this statement, and I share their commitment to a process that includes staff, administrators, caregivers, students, and the community at large. Schools are where we teach academic and life skills and where we foster students' self-determination, dignity, and respect. And every contribution to this process should keep those ideals at the center. We hope to look back at 2026 and 2027 as the year the schools of Amherst began a record of excellence in neuroaffirming, strengths-based education that is genuinely inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of our panelists want to add anything? Okay. The information for the investigator has been put in the chat. It's attached to the agenda and might be on our, okay, is no longer on our screen. Does the school, thank you very much for your work. Is there discussion amongst the committee?
There are requests in the letter that are directed specifically to us. One, it's to formally adopt this statement and support the following 4 requests for all stakeholders. And then the second one is really, I think about, I think if we support the statement, we're supporting those as well. So I'm wondering if we want to have a motion or some discussion and then a motion, and what the thoughts are.
So I have a motion ready, but if somebody else would like to make that, we can have the motion, a second, and then discussion.
Okay, then your motion.
I move that the Amherst School Committee formally adopts the statement outlined in, formally adopts this statement and supports the 4 requests detailed in statement about student safety, how we speak about children in public, and a neuro-affirming path forward.
Second.
Is there a discussion? Laura Jane?
First of all, I want to really thank Tim, Angelica, and Ellen for bringing this forward. It's beautifully written, it's super clear, and it addresses so many critical things. So thank you. I'm really, really grateful for that. I think this is an excellent starting place. And I guess my only question is about the goals, about whether we're allowed to vote on goals in this space. That's a more procedural question than anything else. But just, again, thank you. And Tim, I wish I could write like you can.
To your point, Laura Jane, we are, the motion is to support requests. So it's not a motion to make a goal specifically. Okay, so I think we're okay. Are we ready for a vote, or is there more discussion? Laura Jane, how do you vote?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Deb's a yes?
Yes.
Okay, that's four yeses and one absent. Motion passes. Does anybody want to do the second one, or should I do it as well? I move that the Amherst School Committee support the three requests that elevate pedagogy and cultural change to the level of the superintendent and all committees as outlined in, as detailed, not outlined, in statement about student safety, how we speak about children in public, and a neuro-affirming path forward.
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
I just say that this is really important because where this all started was from a place of hurt and harm. It really started with the things that were bubbling up this fall in Fort River, and then people looking at JKA and talking about restraints and seclusions. But at the foreground, we really need our kids. They're special, they're beautiful, their strengths, their capacities, and environments that support them. And so I feel like I'm really glad that you took the time to write this, to think about it, to do that sort of like proactive work that has to really be part of a cultural shift and making space for children to be wholly who they are. So thank you.
Any more discussion? Sorry, folks. Okay, Bridget, how do you vote?
Yes.
Deb's a yes. Andrew?
Yes.
Laura Jane?
Yes.
Passes. Four yeses, one absent. Sorry. The next part of the agenda item I'm going to present in my role as representative to the Town Elementary School Building Committee. Just give me a second to send Andrew the documents for. Okay, they're on their way. You don't have them yet? Okay. So there's been, to the people who have made the observation that this process is rushed, I would agree with you if I perhaps tuned in when this first became a public issue in February. However, things started over the summer when Bridget made the observation that we needed to revise JKAA to align with an extensive process that the state went through in changing the law around this particular policy and implementation of it. This led to Bridget coming forward in the fall with a draft version that aligns with the regulations that had been approved or voted in June of 2026, 2025, intended to be implemented by all districts, no, required to be implemented by all districts across the Commonwealth by August of 2026, this year. The draft that Bridget brought forward was sent to policy. At the time, the committees chose to do an emergency vote for an updated policy because we found when reviewing the policy that we were updating that it was not up to date with the prior set of regulations. Not exactly sure how that happened. There was work done on revising it for the previous set, but and possibly voted on, but it wasn't in our policy manual. So it came to the attention of the committee that our policy was out of date, not for the new regulations, for the prior set. So we updated, so we did an emergency vote in December of 2025 to update to the then current regulations. And Bridget has been working with policy, Bridget and policy, on it since then, since December of 2025. At the same time, as a representative of the Elementary School Building Committee, it crossed my mind that the new Amethyst Brook, then we called it the elementary school, the new elementary school, plans had been developed and finalized in 2022. And I was concerned that we were going to bring on board rooms that wouldn't be either in compliance with the pending policy for these committees or the regulations. So in December, I engaged in a process where I discussed this with members of the Elementary School Building Committee and CPAC. And in the course of that discussion, I came upon the floor plans. So these were floor plans that were presented by our design team in 2025, in September, October 2025. And an individual in the community looked at them and said, I have never seen that design of the rooms before. And this is somebody who had been following the process from the very beginning. So beyond whether or not these quote unquote reflection spaces met the new regulations, there was another layer of how did this happen? And so there was a timeline that we looked at and found that, let's see if I can find it, a very complete timeline where we went through meetings, agenda items, and when I say we, I mean a very dedicated and hardworking individual that was not me. I'm gonna download it if you guys give me just a sec. I don't know which one it is. I'll get to it in a sec. Well, it became, so yet another level of concern was that all of the public reviews of these plans happened prior to the design of that particular building, that particular part of the building. That was a redesign that was done that involved no public interaction or viewing. And so that's some version of the floor plans. There's actually the other document I sent is the room itself. So prior to that, all of the reflection spaces were one room. They did not have an anteroom. And so that's my role in this, is engaging with members of the elementary school building committee and finding out how this came about and what should be done about it. So it's January, February, March, and April. This process involved pulling together an ad hoc group of interested individuals to discuss the rooms, possibly a redesign. We brought these concerns to the committee early April. April 1st was the date that the design team said that any redesign requests needed to be submitted. I submitted my redesign requests based on that conversation and other conversations I'd had with other individuals. There was another set of requests that were submitted. And that's all I knew about it until April 13th. Earlier in the week, so that's the week, April 13th was the elementary school building committee meeting. Earlier in the week, I had emailed the chair and been told that the agenda item would contain a request, a vote on design modifications for these buildings, these rooms. We had requests, we had specifics, and then in the meeting itself, we were told the vote wouldn't take place, that a different conversation had taken place, and the requests that I had made specifically were largely rejected. Other smaller ones, and maybe important ones as well, were not. The ceiling was lowered. There were requests that involved removing a sound barrier so that from a door, so that an individual in the room could communicate with someone out of the room without the door being opened, undercut the door, a visibility panel, things like that. But the three requests I had made were removing the interior wall between the two spaces, as well as creating a space that, video cameras and swings. Now, the swings is a whole other thing that I don't really want to get into at this point because it's a whole other thing. But the request to remove the wall and the request to install video cameras were not met. Where to go from there? So I've included a fair amount of information about the town's use of video cameras, as well as the policy for the school committee on the agenda, as well as information about the collective bargaining unit, because throughout these conversations around video cameras, we've been told the reasons that video cameras cannot be installed in these rooms were because it was, the union was opposed to it. I don't know that if that's true or not. I came on board pretty late in the process, early 2025. But I found no evidence for any reason that video cameras cannot be installed besides the fact that they have not yet been, had not yet been. I believe strongly that video cameras protect everyone. It protects the child in the space. It protects the individual supervising them, because then there is footage of what happened, so we don't have two different versions of the same experience, which is partially what is being investigated by the superintendent about prior occurrences. And it protects the district, because when a child is alone and in an extreme state, they are not safe. And the lack of safety for that child is paramount in my mind. So I wanted to speak to those. I think that's pretty much all I have, except the caveat being, since the requests from the school committee were not integrated at the meeting, I said, we will do what we need to do, and this meeting is a result of that. It seems like we had reached the end of a collaborative process, and it was time for the school committee, or trying a collaborative process for the development or redesign of those rooms, satisfactory. And there was a redesign, a redesign that I found satisfactory. There was a request by a member of the staff to have a continued conversation, which we implemented, but it was very clear for that conversation that there was not a collaborative frame of mind in that meeting. Not the individual who had suggested that, but regardless, the meeting was not constructive moving forward in a collaborative frame of mind. So this is what we're doing. We're gonna tell people what we as a school committee and community can do to protect children. We're gonna do what we can to protect the children. So I think that's all I have. I do know, where's the motion? Safety and reduce of cameras. Okay, yeah. So unless there is any discussion around the Amethyst Brook seclusion room design timeline, as I've discussed it, I'm ready to move on to the next part of that process, the agenda item.
Can I just want to be sure I'm understanding things correctly. My understanding is that the rooms weren't in the plan when you originally voted on them and they were added later. Did I understand that piece right?
They were in the plan. The current design of the room with an anteroom and an interior room was added afterwards.
So this version of them wasn't approved by the full committee.
As far as we've been able to discern, yes.
Okay, you were on that committee, right?
I was on that committee. I started in 2025.
Okay.
The plans were finalized in 2022.
And the plans with the new anteroom, I'm wondering if they've been inspected by fire. I just recently saw the situation in Gloucester where there was a preschooler who'd been put in seclusion room over 40 times, and the fire chief shut down the seclusion rooms in the school when he went to inspect them. And so I was just wondering some of the reasons related to there being doors. And I did speak with a director of student services this week who said that their doors in another regional school district, and they don't have doors on their rooms at all. They only have timeout rooms. They don't have seclusion rooms, and there are no doors. So I was even confused where along in the process doors came into being, because my understanding of the way this is written is that doors aren't even allowed. So are we like building something that's already out of date and not allowed? Is this okay? And I'm also very concerned about this idea of putting them in a special ed space. Is that itself discrimination? This isn't something you're building for all children. You're suddenly saying, oh, this is for those kids. And I don't know, maybe, This just doesn't add up to me as something, there's so many levels of legality I'm concerned about, both in the process and in the framing. And the way you're describing it, Deb, like is so level-headed and reasoned. But as you go through it, I'm feeling like not reasonable at all. Now, the school committee chair asked the elementary school building committee chair to put something on the agenda and she refused.
She put it on as a vote and it was decided that it was too late to make any more design changes by the time the vote came up on April 13th.
Okay, so the vote didn't happen.
Correct.
This process feels really, really skewed to me from the way that I'm hearing it. And then I'm hearing that you took it to school leadership as well and that there wasn't collaboration.
We are still working through that process. Allison?
Hello, thank you, Deb. I appreciate you being willing to call me into the meeting. Bridget, you're asking questions that I feel that I can provide some answers to, and I just felt like if there were questions that came up that I could directly answer, I would want to be supportive to that. I want to emphasize that we are all, I am the principal of Wildwood Elementary School. I will be the principal of Amethyst Brook Elementary School. And we are all dedicated to protecting kids. So I want to emphasize that we are all standing together in the effort to make sure that we're doing the best by children. You asked about doors. We do not have doors on any of our timeout spaces now. Somebody from CPAC said that they thought doors were helpful for their child. So we went to the design committee and we said, you can leave the doors on and we'll just take them off. Because we've already purchased them officially, so they can be removed. That's what we did at Wildwood. That's what we've done at Fort River. But we were responding to a CPAC committee member's suggestion that doors might be helpful. The other piece about this being too late, there are things that are not recommended by the highly trained staff who work with children who have needs that are in this area. And we just need to make sure we're working together. Some of the requests were not recommended. If we can work together and grow in the same space together, I said we would dedicate, I would work to dedicate funds to help to make the changes that need to be made as long as we're all together. I don't want us to go into a situation where we hang a swing from a ceiling in a room that is 10 feet wide and that creates its own problems. Children who need these types of supports, they need tools that are more flexible in nature, that can be removed quickly, that can be offered quickly. I can tell you also that the reason why you want two spaces is because it allows for two children to access the space. I know there's been concerns around the size of the space, but I'm letting you know, children who are having a dysregulatory moment, like coziness, we use body socks, which are these things that a child can climb into. They can use tents. It's the smallness that helps them feel safe. Okay, so I think that one of the things that I think somebody also said, I think Bridget said, is it discriminatory when it's only available in one room because it's accessed by students with special needs? We actually have spaces that we use throughout the building now. So in the design of Amethyst Brook, you have one of the reflection spaces that's not, you don't have to go into a room to access, but we can access that room in the classroom by any student if they need to have that space. We do not seclude children in our ILC Building Blocks Ames programs. We don't make them in an island of themselves. If they have some type of activity that they want to share with the larger community, children go in and we make it accessible in all spaces. So the fact that it's in that room is only because we know that children who have those needs often need that type of support. But the whole idea of a timeout space where children can choose to go into a space that has sensory tools like weighted blankets, bean bags, um, hammocks. These are all things that are possible when you have these smaller spaces, and the children in these spaces need those types of supports. So I'm here to answer questions. I'm here to collaborate. I am not the only educator. You have a school, you have schools filled with people who care deeply for children. And we are here to work together to make sure that we are in compliance with all laws, that we're working with you to make sure that we're serving our community as best as possible.
I appreciate that, Allison, and I particularly appreciate that you've worked to build a collaborative process, both during that difficult meeting on April 13th as subsequent to that. So I would like to state categorically that you were not the person who was uncollaborative in the follow-up meeting. And I felt like you did what you could within that meeting to move it forward in a constructive way. But one of the members of CPAC left abruptly during that meeting because they expressed to me that they did not come to that meeting to be reprimanded for tone. And another stayed through it and left in tears. And so that's, I believe we will continue to move forward collaboratively, but it is now April and it's time for the school committee to do its job. And these processes would have been better had they been done more collaboratively. I think in the interest of the safety of all children, we are engaged in parallel processes, the superintendent, the administration, and the school committee. And I'm open to continuing to integrate those as much as possible. But the meeting on the 17th, no, the meeting on the 24th of April, in my mind left me no recourse but to proceed as we are. But I do thank you for attending, for lending your voice, and of course, all the work that you do for our district and our children. Any further discussion about Amethyst Brook? Laura Jane, yes.
It's not specifically about Amethyst Brook, but Allison, I thought I heard you say that there were no doors at Fort River. Did I mishear you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we were directed to have doors taken off. I don't know if my camera went off.
It did go off.
When did that happen?
I want to say last year or
Uh,
2 years ago. I can't remember, but I can get back to you with that.
That would be
But-
helpful.
But the doors were, I was there on March 10th of
We're-
2026.
Allison is the principal of Wildwood.
But so that's why I was trying to get clarity because it sounded like Allison, sorry. It sounded like you said the doors came off. There are no doors at Wildwood and they came off Fort River, but they didn't, right? Like there's still doors at Fort River and
Okay,
right?
let's
Trying to get
we saw
clarity.
pictures and Allison's made her statement, and I don't want to work on resolving that particular issue at the moment. But I will entertain any other discussions about Amethyst Brook. Or the next agenda, next part of the, Bridget. So
Deb, what do you suggest as next steps?
resolving that particular question about the doors.
About all the sort of changes and adaptations that you were attempting to make to the newly built school with these rooms.
I we'll have to get back to the committee on next steps regarding Amethyst Brook. I don't have anything at this point. At that meeting, there were several questions that were raised that Allison said she would find out from the design team what the current status was. One of them was what the color of the padding was in the room. Another was whether or not the padding extended through the antechamber as well as the interior room, or just the interior room. And the third, I believe, was the same question regarding the flooring. So those I expect Allison to bring back to the group that met. I do not know if those members of the community are going to be willing to continue with
Okay.
the
I
nature
did,
of that.
I did
comment.
hear, Deb, I want you to know I did hear back
Uh-huh.
around the color of the padding.
Yes.
The different colors are very expensive, which I don't think is inhibitive. But when I looked at the options, the committee member, the CPAC committee member wanted pastels, and the pinks and the blues are more of a neon. And I thought that's not what we want. So I just wanted you to know I am looking into those things.
Thank you. That's great. I think in my mind, anything but blue, but most of my house is blue, so I don't have a sophisticated color palette. Andrew,
Yeah, just to walk it back a second, what is the difference between reflection and seclusion? And is that purposeful? If we're phasing out as a state seclusion,
Bridget, you want to give it a stab, or? My understanding,
I have it in the policy.
okay, there we go. At least somebody wrote it. What was the word I used? Reflection being a euphemism. I mean,
seems to walk a fine line.
It's even, yes. I think the thing is that the seclusion is when a student is involuntarily confined and not allowed to leave, right? So you could have a reflective or timeout space as long as the student is free to leave voluntarily at any time. Then you may have a space, which I could say the spaces that Laura Jane showed us don't appear to be the type of space somebody would say, ooh, I'd love to go in there and chill out. But the type of space Allison was describing might be that type of space where someone would say, hey, this class is getting overwhelming. Could I just go take a little, chill time in the beanbag room or whatever it is, right? Like, I know I've run programs at UMass for high schoolers, and we have like a meditation corner, and it's got bean bags and cozy stuff and low lights, and sometimes people need a break, so um, that for me, I think is actually the way that the definition of the state for timeout reads. It's a behavioral intervention that the student can suggest for themselves for self-regulation, or the teacher can suggest as well, but it's not meant to be punitive. It's not meant to be locked. It's supposed to be calming, etc.
Thank you.
in Wildwood, the room is called Oasis. In the Early Childhood Education Center, it's called the Twinkle Room. I think there is good practices going on in this district. Okay. So the next item in this agenda item is some motions that I'm about to send to Andrew, if I can find them. Are they on there? Students, oh yeah. All right. Okay, so Laura Jane, these are yours. Do you want to make them? Do you want to discuss them ahead of time?
I would like to make the motion, see if it gets seconded, and then we can discuss.
So there's 4, so we'll take them one at a time.
Okay, motion 1 actually has 3 parts. So that makes 7, sort of. Okay. Motion 1, seclusion, timeout, and restraint use, monitoring and notification. I move that there be zero or near zero use of seclusion as aligns with upcoming state policy and law, 603 CMR 46.00 and 603 CMR 18.00. And as of this motion, have all the doors removed from the blue rooms within 48 hours of the adoption of this policy. I move that effective immediately, the administration of the school provide timely notice to caregivers of any use of restraint, timeout, or seclusion by the end of the school day following an incident, and that a copy of all documentation and reasoning for the use of restraint, timeout, and/or seclusion be provided to the family within 12 hours. I move that the superintendent report to this committee at our next regular meeting on the district's current practices for parental caregiver notification following any use of restraint, timeout, or seclusion, including the timeframe for notification, the method of communication, and how compliance with 603 CMR 46.00 is documented and verified.
Second.
Laura Jane, I had a question. I think you mean not policy, but motion for the.
The adoption of this motion. Thank you.
Okay, so friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment accepted.
Andrew, do you accept the modification to the friendly amendment?
Accepted, yep.
The amendment to the, I know, yeah, okay. Discussion?
I have a couple of small things that that I'm curious about. One is 48 hours adoption, that if we adopt that tonight, that's this week. So I just want to, right? No, that's next week. So that gives a little bit of time. It sounded like there would need to be, like facility staff and other folks involved. So I'm curious about that piece. The
I mean,
second
I
thing is,
can take, oh, I'm sorry, Bridget.
yeah. The second thing is in my motion, in the JKA that in both versions of JKA, we have immediate notice to the caregivers, not the end of the school day, because I think that gives you the opportunity as a caregiver to decide, okay, if my student's that dysregulated, I'd like to come and get them. So could we make that a friendly amendment to 1B?
I would accept that friendly amendment.
Yeah, I would accept that.
Okay.
Can you tell me specifically how that reads?
As opposed to timely notice, we'll just put immediate notice and then we'll scratch out by the end of the school day.
Immediate and by the end of the school day following an incident. So the only change is from timely to immediate?
And we eliminate I want to say the subjunctive clause, but I don't think that's quite right. By the end of the school day following an incident, that just goes because notice is immediate, so.
By the end of the school day, period.
So that next part can
Oh.
be crossed out.
Okay.
No, end of the school
that
day
whole
gets
part of
crossed
it.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Following an incident remains? But just
Ye-
by the end of the school day?
Yes, because timely notice instead of, it says immediate notice.
Yep.
Should I read the
Yes,
amended
please.
version? I move that effective immediately, the administration of the school provide immediate notice to caregivers of any use of restraint, timeout, or seclusion following an incident, and that a copy of all documentation and reasoning for the use of restraint, timeout, and/or seclusion be provided to the family within 12 hours.
Okay, who's the second?
Me.
Andrew,
Yeah.
okay. Any more discussion? Is that all you had?
Bridget, I wanted to offer that I can take a door off. So doors can come off really easily. It's not that hard to take them off. I bet Julian could take a door off.
Can I have 1 minute to read 1C a little more carefully? Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Any further discussion on motion 1? Okay. Andrew, how do you vote?
Yes.
Deb is a yes. Bridget?
Yes.
Laura Jane?
Yes.
Passes 4 yeses, 1 absent. Proceed.
Motion number 2, neuroaffirming training. I move that by June 1st, 2026, the superintendent, in consultation with CPAC, identify and present to this committee a recommended professional development program grounded in neuroaffirming, trauma-informed, and asset-based approaches to supporting students with disabilities, along with the proposed implementation timeline and cost estimate.
Second.
Discussion?
I think this is in line with what we just supported in Tim's motion, and I welcome anything that moves it forward quickly.
Okay. Vote? Bridget?
Yes.
Laura Jane?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Deb is a yes. 4 yeses, 1 absent. Motion 3?
So this is moving to the investigation. I move that the superintendent communicate to families that information shared with the investigator will be handled with the greatest possible confidentiality, and that the district's council advise this committee on what privacy protections can be formally guaranteed under Massachusetts public record laws and FERPA.
Second.
I think we can't move that the superintendent do that. I think we move to direct the superintendent to do that. So I think it is, I move that the Amherst School Committee direct the superintendent to communicate to families that that information shared and the rest remains intact. So that's offered as a friendly amendment.
Accepted?
Accepted.
Discussion? Are we ready for a vote on motion 3? Okay, I'm just gonna go in order. Laura Jane,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Deb is a yes. Bridget?
Yes.
4 yeses, 1 absent, the motion passes. Motion 4, it's a long one.
So I guess I'll change it a little bit to reflect what you just described.
Mhm.
I move that the Amherst School Committee direct the superintendent to provide this committee with regular progress updates on the investigation at each regular meeting until its conclusion, including expected timeline, scope, and number of stakeholders who have participated, and that the committee receive the final report upon completion, with student and caregiver identifying information redacted in accordance with FERPA and applicable state law. And this is just the DESI policy, so it's not part of the motion. That's
Oh.
just, it's just referencing at the very
Okay.
beginning what DESI policy
All right,
is. So it's not that long.
thank you. So it's not that long. So that's Laura Jane,
I'll second the motion.
first and second. Discussion? Andrew, how do you vote?
Yes.
Deb's a yes. Bridget?
Yes.
Laura G.
Yes.
The motion passes. And that's one long agenda item. Do we want to take a 5-minute recess or push forward? 5-minute recess. We're in recess at 8:25. We will return at 8:30. Okay, so I call the Amherst School Committee back to order at 8:34 PM. I'm going to do roll call again. Lord Jane,
Here.
Andrew,
Here.
Deb's here. Bridget,
Here.
you're here. Okay, so the next agenda item is the actual policy. So I'm not going to ask Andrew to pull all this up, except for the one I think I just sent you. Yeah. Nope. So this is the context. It's a little confusing because it was late and I was tired and I err on the side of completeness instead of brevity. I wish I could write like Tim too. So it is just attached to the agenda is the agenda item for the first read and the attachments to the first read agenda item for no good reason. Then I like making things complicated. I do want to go through this one of the attachments as with our new lens, because I have learned, I've been mucking around in all of this stuff for way too long. I have a whole binder that I wish I didn't have on restraints and seclusions. But the worldview that was presented to us tonight, I think is very valuable. And I would like to look at this particular agenda item with that lens. So okay, Andrew, coming your way. So just to review, we did an emergency vote, passed a policy that is in accordance with the previous set of regulations, which was implemented in a training in January of 2026. And I would like to go through those training slides. I'm sorry? Okay. Am I in the Zoom? Did I quit it? Does anybody see me? Yeah, okay. Okay. So this is our training. It's not, I actually haven't gone through it looking at comparing it to our policy versus whether or not it is just conforming with the law. So just put an asterisk next to that because that's not really what I'm looking for here. It's the 7th, right? Yes. I can't find it. Somebody want to send me the Zoom link? That's where I just looked. Look again. I just would like to be on the Zoom. So, oh, here, maybe it's this one. Ah, there it is. Anybody read Knuffle Bunny? Trixie's daddy went back and looked harder. No, never mind him.
I love that book.
Aggle flabble. All right. Aggle flabble clabble snurp. All right. This is where my heart is. Children's books. Okay. So page down, please, Andrew. Okay. So physical restraint. So we have a visual of a child being restrained. Please, page down. Okay, please page down. We have another visual prone restraint. Please page down. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, I missed it. Can you go to the page that says timeout? Oh, we're not there yet. Okay. There we go. Keep going. One more. Let's keep going. That's it. So generally speaking, the teacher in me does not like to underline things that are wrong. I learned in teacher school to reframe things. That's an answer to a different question. But now that we have this new lens, and I'm going to read from the CPAC and Shore's statement. One worldview frames student needs as behavioral deficits to being observed, modified, and extinguished, where success is measured by how closely a student's behavior conforms to expected norms. The other worldview frames student needs in terms of strengths to build on, prioritizing student autonomy, communication, and regulation, while practices grounding in neuro-affirming approaches that embrace, with practices grounded in neuro-affirming approaches that embrace neurological difference as intrinsic to human diversity. This training is what our educators experienced when both being brought up to speed with the new policy, which should have been the old policy, as well as foreshadowing the new regulations. That's not timeout. That child is not being invited to self-regulate. That child is being punished. So that's not the worldview we're putting forward. And I am appalled that this was done in our district and that nobody noticed, or if they did, they didn't say anything. And I'm sorry, that's all I got to say. We will do better. We must do better. Any other comments on that particular part? Sorry. All right. I'm muted. No, I think it's
I'm not even on.
okay. Oh, no, I'm not. Okay. All right. So, yeah, that says the picture says 1,000 words. That's just the wrong picture. And that's why I voted to support all those motions immediately. We've got some work to do before we're ready. To engage constructively. Okay, so then the rest of this agenda item is just the second read.
So, if I push this, will it stay? All right. Thank you, Deb. So my original goal and interest, I'm working on policy JKAA, like Deb said, went back to the summer when I've been listening to the statewide hearings and really hearing parents and advocates talk about the experiences that their children were having. And I wanted our district to be in line with both the spirit and the actual wording of the Massachusetts 2026 law that goes into place in August, and more importantly, to actively reduce the use of restraint and seclusion in our elementary schools from our current practice um, where they're just restraints alone, like we said, were almost 100 in some years, and this fall we're 30, to rare and true emergencies. And these practices were never intended to be routine instructional or behavioral tools, and yet in some of our schools, they're being applied to young children. And I just feel like a school system committed to inclusion, dignity, and equity should treat their use as extraordinary, not ordinary. It feels to me like this level of restraint and the unknown instances of seclusion, like that's unacceptably high. Went to see, is it unacceptable? Does this not make sense or not? And I just went through the data and I went in the A's. I've got Amesbury, Andover. What's the third one? There were 4 A's with 0 use or near 0
Hillsborough?
use because they don't check 0 to 1, and they weren't they were a mix of communities. They were bigger communities. Andover is practically a city. Arlington, which is, sort of like a Boston suburb. What's the other one? Amesbury, which is like a little seaside town, like they were a real mix right there. I didn't even have to go past the letter A to find out like it is possible to run schools without these practices at the elementary level. I didn't look beyond elementary, but it just feels to me like these types of numbers, these numbers we're seeing in Amherst Elementary, they demand action. And the state and national evidence is unequivocal. Restraint and seclusion cause long-term harm, particularly to our most vulnerable students. But the data shows they're very disproportionately used with students with disabilities, students of color, transgender, and gender non-conforming students. In addition, these inequities in terms of disability have been central to decades of civil rights advocacy and changes across time in Massachusetts' longstanding regulatory framework. Some of the first statewide rules were in response to injuries and deaths, even in Massachusetts, and some nearby are really shocking. If you look at what happened at Peck Middle School in 2016, a student's jaw was broken, there was sexual assault, that all happened in the seclusion rooms, you know, and that's in Holyoke for folks who don't know. And that's the reason I think the Commonwealth has been really clear. There were people who came from all over the state in those hearings. Maybe if I hadn't listened to them, everyone wouldn't be listening to me so much this year. But really, really harmful practices that leave emotional scars on students for a long time. What I thought was really interesting is when we were collecting testimony and talking to people about it, that those of us who have older children who went through the schools in our community where these are practiced came to us and said, yeah, we knew kids that happened to, or yeah, we talked about these rooms. They were really scary. Everybody talked about how dirty they were or how there were spiders in them and how they were like such scary places. And when Laura gave the pictures, I realized like they weren't exaggerating. You know, I know sometimes with teenagers, you think, oh, maybe they're exaggerating, but the pictures sort of matched the reality and memories in their minds. So I guess what I want to say is like when something this rare becomes commonplace, especially with young children, I don't think it's a failure of any of the individual educators per se. I think it's a leadership culture and systems failure. I deeply respect the professionalism of our teachers, clinicians, specialists, the paras. They are doing really hard work day to day. And I think they brought to our attention concerns about safety and staffing level and the impact of budget reductions that people have been following know I was talking about 2 years in advance. But at the same time, the people are really responsible for those pieces that might move the needle. Those people are in leadership, right? We have an obligation to ensure our schools operate within the law without harmful practices, regardless of what the resource constraints are. And we are really the first line in district leadership. We're the supervisor of the superintendent, and it's our responsibility. And so that's why I think policy matters. It's not a discussion about assigning blame to who did what wrong in the past. There's a separate investigation for that, and it sounds like a trustworthy process, and I hope the scope will be as broad as it can. But on the other hand, we know leadership sets clear expectations, builds supportive systems, and establishes a culture where prevention and dignity are the norm. So in response to those realities and our responsibilities, really, I'm proposing 2 policy approaches. Everyone who knows I started this process with a very detailed, intentionally limited, and tightly designed policy to reduce the use of restraint and seclusion as very specific affirming policies in it. It has training, CPS training. I actually have data from a couple of districts, one in Maine that looks really similar to ours when they started with numbers near 100. And over 5 years, those numbers are down into the single digits. And another like a big district, Fairfax County, where they went from like 1,600 a year down to 100 a year through the use of the collaborative problem solving. I don't know what the S stands for, but collaborative problem solving approach. And so I include that in both versions of the policy, but I think I'm getting ahead of myself, which is the second policy that I've called in this document zero near zero use was in response to a lot of critique at the subcommittee that the first policy was too detailed, too procedural, and needed to be much shorter. And so out of that, then my feeling was, okay, we need a really strictly prohibitive approach. So I looked at Cambridge. They have their JKAA that has a very prohibitive approach, and I took that type of language into that one. It says only to protect members of the school committee from assault or imminent serious physical harm, and with extreme caution when all other alternatives have been taken. But this policy suggests that the procedures would be developed by the district and then approved by the school committee, which really, I think, would lengthen the process in what has already been a lengthy process. And it also doesn't have those other pieces in it as strongly. It does have immediate notification to parents and some other specificity around the training, but it doesn't have a lot of the protections that a lot of community members helped build into the first policy when I worked on it. So what I wanted to do really is get the idea from this committee, how you align with the subcommittee on policy. Do you prefer the more robust and lengthy and more detailed version that really spells out the definitions and shows what's what and even links to examples? I think it links to some state examples that are really well done. Or the sort of simpler zero near zero use policy that then says, okay, school committee can then approve the superintendent's plan. And I would say, a school committee is not a fixed feature. We're people who will change over time. And so that would always be the way it runs, where a policy does have the advantage of being long-term. So I offer you both approaches. The things that are consistent are the training, which research has shown to be really effective, and both include a timeline for implementation to get us on track. And I would just say, I think as elected representatives, our duty is not just to provide the resources, but write the policies that set the ethical direction and rebuild public trust when that's strained. That's the moment we're at. Massachusetts law permits school committees to exceed state minimums. It expects us to lead when student safety, civil rights, and dignity are at stake, actually. Massachusetts school committees are famous for that. So tell me how we want to do this. Yeah.
To me, JKAA is a lot like JICFB, which is our anti-bullying policy. And we've just gone through a long process on that where the way the policy was proceduralized did not align with the details, the specifics of the policy. And for that reason, and for the reason that JICFB is given more latitude to be more prescriptive than any other policies, I would prefer the more detailed, extensive process that makes it clear what can and cannot be done, so we don't have this disappear when other people are sitting in this seat. The process of going forward, looking at a procedure, trying to map the procedure to align with a policy that is more prescriptive, but is not the policy being implemented, makes no sense to me. So I think if we want the procedures, we should vote along the lines, the more detailed policy. That's my own, that's my current thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I echo your sentiments. I think the more information, especially about something like this, the better. And the closer to a clear definition of everything is, I hope, more helpful for everyone.
Laura J.
So I was leaning in the opposite direction, because simplicity feels like an easier thing to implement, but it's true that not every school committee will, I mean, this policy could be changed anyway, right? Like that can happen over time, but hopefully not. The amount of work that Bridget has put into doing this, I feel like should be lauded and applauded. Her commitment to this work has been extraordinary. And I was I was only leaning in the simpler kind of near zero policy language just because it just felt like maybe less detailed felt like, okay, we can just like do it. But I'm now convinced very quickly that more details. Not surprised, Deb, that you liked the more details. That did not shock me. Um, but I'm totally fine with going in that direction.
I was leaning the way you were leaning earlier today, and then a trusted friend pointed out that the current policy and the more, the less is more policy may look almost identical in terms of the proceduralization of them. And so that convinced me that that's not what I wanted, but I did understand that sentiment and embrace it 12 hours ago.
So I'm in favor of my first policy because that was mine. The other one was really just trying to come to compromise and work together with the regional subcommittee on policy that I came to that other version. So I also am most in favor of that, but I think I need your flow chart to know what our next steps are.
We're here.
So I think we're at, if no changes are needed. The only thing I don't know is if the most recent version was posted. So we may need to make just a procedural vote on the next agenda. Because the longer version that you have posted isn't right? And I have a 4/12 update that includes all the research on CPS in it, and it's also shorter. How I manage that, I don't know. But
Okay, so
I think what would be important is if we could signal our intention to vote JKAA third draft. This has already been submitted to subcommittee on policy. So, but I'm not sure that counts for our meeting. Do you see what I mean with the legality? But I think if we signal our intention to vote it, and then we just bring it and do a simple procedural vote at the next meeting, we don't, so maybe we, something just clear so that, mainly the main thing is because we meet so infrequently, I want the district to know that this is what we'll be asking them to implement.
can you give me the description of, so this, the one that's attached to the agenda, 2/23/26
Yeah.
is the most recent one?
It isn't. The most recent one is 4/12/2026.
So
And
it's not on board docs yet?
I don't think it is.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I thought I double checked that. I'm so sorry.
No, I think you double checked it and I was half asleep and I didn't catch that was
Okay.
you double checking. I just figured that out in the meeting too.
Okay. So I think we can still vote it because we did a first read. But if you want to be extra careful, then I would move to support.
How about we say with
Oh, there we go.
as to do that as amended
Okay, so
on 4/12, because that's also been in our record in our history as it went through subcommittee on policy as well.
so the first read, we're still going to call the first read,
Yeah,
the JKAA submitted to policy 2/23/26 is the first read.
it's just an amended version of that one that includes the CPS and
So
Have some. Is that helpful? Let's see. Andrew, if I send it to you, do you want to put it on the screen? Does that make sense?
Sure. Does it matter that it, though it wasn't on?
I think
no,
we're
we can
going to say
attach it
as
afterward.
amended. Yeah,
As amended, we can attach it afterwards.
okay.
Okay, can we read it through since it
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
attached?
how I feel, right? That's why I asked that. Thank you.
I I've had my hand up. I know you can't.
Laura Jane?
I wanted to ask about even if, so the challenge is that this is not, the final document was not the one that was actually posted, but we have the final document. We've already done a first read. We've done a second read. There's some little changes, but they're not big changes. They're not fundamental to the policy. Can we do like, is it possible for us to do a, I'm totally blank. I'm sorry. What's the word when we like postpone our own policy?
Suspend, table?
Yeah, like can we suspend our second read policy if we need to allow this to be the second read? I mean,
This is the second read.
so
It's
it
at least the
so it
second
shouldn't
read,
matter. It doesn't
'cause
matter
we
that
did also read it at joint policy and,
so it's like the
we-
14th read.
yeah, exactly.
So all
Okay.
we have to do is read this one, post it, and that will be the one that we vote tonight, if we're
Okay.
willing to vote tonight,
Yeah.
unless somebody
And-
prefers to make a motion to table it to another meeting.
I'm going to send it to you, Laura, since you're over there as well.
Can you send it to Andrew too,
I did.
and me, and then I can post it?
Yeah, I'll send it to you again, Deb, so it's front of the mailbox. Let's see.
This is like the most recent one.
Yeah, this is the newest.
Let's see if this works again. Yes. Laura.
And this is the 412 version?
Yeah. Give it to Andrew. Yeah, so everyone should have it right at the top of their mailbox, and Andrew's sharing it. And Laura, if you want, we can use a goal of 0 and near 0 use as a friendly amendment. I know how much you love the language.
Or we could put it in now and then we don't read it as
Mhm.
changed, and then we don't have to amend it, because nobody has moved
Yep,
to it yet. So let's do that
Perfect.
first.
I do love that language.
I know. I'm gonna just put a sentence that said, it's a goal of this document for the district to reach. No, oh, well, it should change, oh, it won't change in real time, yeah. Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, because if we have any other friendly amendments.
History is going to look back at this and be like, I can't believe they even had this conversation at
You
all.
know? Yeah. That's, I mean, that's why the goal of abolition would be great, but what's the path there?
Yeah.
Right.
I think we've done a lot of outlining of what the paths can look like tonight.
Yes.
Bridget, I just want to say again, I am so impressed with how much work you have done over the last year on this.
It really was a, like it was a community effort. It was a group effort. We got statewide expertise. Now I've spoken with people nationally and people who've been involved in it nationally as well. So I really appreciate and have learned a lot.
Can you go down a little bit? Oh, I guess I can look at my own copy too. Sorry. Bridget, can I ask,
Yeah.
under the complaint and grievance procedures, parents and guardians may meet with the principal and if not satisfied, the superintendent and may file complaint to the district grievance procedure. No
Can you tell me the
violation.
section?
Oh, I'm sorry. Above where you are,
Oh,
right?
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. The non-disclosure agreement, that's just basically saying like the district cannot hide these complaints from anyone. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
And, okay. And we are required to report anyway.
The situation is in some districts in Massachusetts, I don't know if they're ours or not, but that some parents sign a non-disclosure agreement about their children's experience in the cities or towns special ed programs as as a golden handshake to get their student into a specialized program or an out-of-district placement or something like that. And in this case, if they push that under the rug, then the practice would be continued and still implicate the children who are there present. And that's the thinking
Oh,
behind that.
got
You
it.
see what I
Okay.
mean?
Yep. Makes perfect sense. I move to accept this entire policy.
Let's make sure everyone has time to read it.
Sorry, I'm a superhero.
Bridget, I wish I wrote like you too.
I feel like I write a little wordy, but y'all, a little wordy.
It's awesome that everyone has great strengths.
Can I second the move? Are we open to seconds? I am seconding.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. A roll call vote. Laura Jane,
Absolutely.
Bridget,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes, yes.
Deb, yes. That's 4 yeses, 1 absence. It passes.
Yay.
So what was the actual motion, Laura Jane? Was it, I move to approve the 4/12/2026 JKA third draft as presented?
Oh my gosh, it's like you read my mind. That sounds exactly like what I said.
Okay, that's what I thought. I move. Okay, we have some timelines to discuss. So following up on this, I would like us to talk about the vote on the operationalization of this, the development of the training materials, the approval or the vote by the Amherst School Committee that the training materials accurately operationalize the voted policy and an implementation date. So it's operationalization, training materials development, a vote by the school committee that the training materials accurately operationalize the voted policy and an implementation date. So what's the discussion on those 4 parts?
I just wanted to go to the implementation section of the policy because I feel like I put a date that it shall be fully operational with a full cohort of trained staff in every building no later than August 26, 2026. So maybe we need to review the plan at what we're in May, and would you say the June meeting?
Are you suggesting that that is too far away or too soon?
It's a week past the law. The law goes into effect on August 17th.
Right,
And it's the first day of school in Amherst. That's why that day was picked, I think. Or at least the first day that teachers return. I'm not sure which one, but I
right.
picked it for a reason.
But our June meeting is the 23rd of June.
Can I ask, what is the consequence if we don't get to that?
Consequence, we don't implement?
Yeah, like if it's not like a full cohort of trained staff in every building, um, feels like a little bit of a domino effect with the budget not being even passed yet by the town council. Do, does that make sense, what I'm sort of, I just want to make sure that this is, like, I want, this is what I want, this is what I think we should do. But we have to identify the training modules, right? We have to work, we've already sort of directed CPAC and the superintendent to work together to identify the proper training systems. And we need full staff, right?
I would say that I talked to the superintendent and she said that whether we pass the policy or not, that she felt she could implement the training because she said an alternative, you know, if we weren't sure on policy, was just to direct her to implement the trainings. And I think there's only 2 trainings required in this particular document. Maybe there's 3, you know, but I guess it depends how CPS and the neurodivergent affirming types of practices overlap. You know,
So by our June meeting, we will be able to sort of assess the process or the progress towards this.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, and I get it. It's a big lift and we're doing a lot of other things at once. But I don't think we really have choice to start another school year that starts the way last school year did.
100% agree. I'm trying to figure out like what happens if we're not there. should we-
Legally or from an operational point of view? Laura Jane,
Say the beginning part, sorry.
do you mean what happens legally or what happens from an operational point of view in our district?
Legally. My question is not in any way to dissuade us from keeping this in there. I just want to know if there's implications for the district if we don't have everything in place.
I don't know, we've been out of compliance with our bullying policy for 18 months, but
And harassment.
yeah.
So that's a fair point. Okay. I retract my question.
I think those are questions we have to start to take seriously, Laura, but that might be, you know, planned for another meeting.
Fair.
Okay, let's hit some dates and I can make my motion. Operationalize, develop training materials, bring training materials to the committee for a vote and implementation. Do we need to break it down into steps or do we just vote the implementation date? I feel like we need to make sure our eyes agree with the implementation with the training materials based on our experience proceduralizing properly GICFB.
I agree. And I think the June meeting date is a fair meeting date because the superintendent mentioned that she would be doing trainings in June.
Okay, any further discussion? Oh, I guess I'd do the motion and then we discuss it. Date anyway, June 16th. I move that the Amherst School District, the Amherst School Committee direct the superintendent to operationalize the policy we just voted, to develop training materials, bring the training materials to the Amherst School Committee for a vote by the committee on whether or not the materials align, whether or not the materials accurately operationalize
The intent of the
Policy.
committee.
the
The intent of the policy.
The intent of the policy and subject to that vote, implement by August 26th, 2026.
Second.
Discussion? Vote? Andrew?
Yes.
Deb? Yes. Laura Jane?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Passes 4 yeses, 1 absent. And that's it. Future agenda planning, we can do by email. Unless anybody wants to bring anything up now. I move we adjourn the Amherst School Committee I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, no. Yeah, Laura Jane,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes. Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Deb is a yes. We are adjourned at 9:25.
Wow, great job.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.